Thank you, Ed. It is so good to look out into the community today and see some folks who have not been here in a while back home, to see others visiting, and a lot of you here who I've said, I hope you and you are here on the same week. So after church today, I'm excited to see some connections being made. Some of you who've heard about each other but not had a chance to visit yet. Our story today is one that is familiar to many who grew up in the church. The calling of the disciples and the idea that Jesus would make them fishers of people. So much of our symbolism in the church around fish comes from this story and this idea of a bunch of fishermen who become evangelists and students and healers and teachers, community organizers, church planters, and more. It's hard to imagine just changing direction midlife, but that's what happens. It starts with Jesus stepping on to the boat, and the captain of the boat, the fisherman of the boat, allowing him on board. Jesus steps onto the front because the crowd has gotten a little too handsy maybe. They've come for healing as much as teaching, and they're pressing in on him with their personal needs, and they can't hear what he's saying. The ones behind them can't hear him. So he steps onto the edge of a boat on the water and scoots back a little bit. It gives some space so that those who are there can just stop and listen, and so he can address the whole crowd. And as he does, these fishermen are moved, so that by the end of their experience with Jesus, they are ready to reimagine their life in a whole new way. It's hard to imagine just changing life mid-course. But they did. They were not the first, and I'm sure they won't be the last. There are stories that have inspired us over the years. People who have shocked us with the changes in their life. Some of them are a little more well-known than others. Most recently, I've been inspired by Pat McAfee, who's a comedian. And he's a comedian and radio personality and TV personality because in his mind, in his words, he got really tired of punting footballs every day. He was an all-star punter for the Indianapolis Colts. He became the voice of the team, because that always happens to the kicker, when Peyton Manning left. But he was the most outspoken person and had a great personality, and people liked him. He was funny. So all of a sudden he realized, wait, I don't have to just stand here and kick footballs every day. I could get on TV. I could be on the radio. I could do my own thing, and he did. He reimagined what his career might be. There was a med school dropout in Italy who didn't know what to do, so he joined the military. When his military service ended, he still didn't know what to do. So he picked up an odd job as a window dresser at a department store. He got promoted to the men's section, where he envisioned how it could look better if they designed it his way. And Giorgio Armani built an empire off of that. Some of you may have heard the story of the failed newspaper editor who was fired for a lack of creativity and having no good ideas, who built Disneyland. There was a farm woman, housekeeper, who did embroidery. As she hit 80, her fingers started to hurt from the needles. It was too fine a point, so she picked up a paintbrush to do her art. And we know her as Grandma Moses today. 80 years old, she became a painter, and her paintings pull over $1 million at auction. Here's a fun one for you. Can you guess this person? An OSS CIA administrator, keeping track of all the generals involved with the U.S. intelligence, helped our military invent a shark repellent to keep the fish and sharks away from ordnance that was sent out to blow up enemy boats and submarines. It was the first thing she ever cooked. She followed her husband, who worked for the State Department, to France, where she discovered French cooking. And then Julia Child retired from CIA service to become the first United States cooking, cookbook, and TV personality around culinary arts. A medical doctor is another fun one. He got tired of serving in medicine, started doing stand-up comedy, got parts in a few movies. Ken Jeong. who now plays a doctor on his show, Dr. Ken. He started as a doctor, he reimagined himself as a comedian and actor, and now he plays a doctor on his own sitcom. And then one of the most famous within the church community, Millard Fuller, self-made millionaire as a lawyer, businessman, who was unhappy. And so he gave it all away, recommitted himself to his faith, to his partner, and he and Laura Fuller together created Habitat for Humanity, giving away everything to start over and reimagine themselves. Now, this isn't just something that strangers do, that celebrities do. In this room, we have people who've reimagined themselves in spectacular ways. In this room, we have the would-be psychologist who transformed themselves into a financial and accounting person, and then a caregiver for their family, and a musician for us. In this community, we have an athlete who missed the Olympics to come and start a family in the U.S., our friend Ceci. In this room, in this community, we have a glassblower from West Virginia who became an aerospace engineer, and Doris's husband, Albert. And we have a youth minister who swore he would never get stuck in the pulpit every week like those sellout pastors who didn't do the real work in the church. I'll let you guess who that one was. Reimagining ourselves. Reimagining ourselves has different motives. Sometimes it's a change in a relationship. Sometimes a relationship ends. Sometimes a relationship transforms and needs something different out of us. And we have to reinvent ourselves for the new time and reality. Sometimes it's health or our ability. Sometimes it's a shift in the world or the culture. Sometimes we're just unhappy. We're unhappy with how things are. And we have to reimagine ourselves. Sometimes reimagining ourselves can be dramatic. Or it can be a subtle shift that no one but us really noticed. Sometimes reimagining ourselves can be transformative. Sometimes it's just a little tweak that allows us to go about our work, our day, our life in a way that makes us happy. Sometimes reimagining ourselves is a spiritual experience. It's one we can celebrate with others. It opens us up to new realities around us. In today's story, Jesus is teaching to a crowd and steps back as they get a little too close. He hops on a boat, floats back enough to be able to really share with them. And at the end, when he's done talking, he stays with the boat. He stays with the fishermen. And he invites them to take a risk. He gives them a simple direction that doesn't seem to make sense. But they take a shot. What have they got to lose? They take a risk, and they're rewarded. Jesus then invites them to do something even bolder. He invites them to see themselves in a new way. Not just see fishing different, not just expect that they might do better, but to see themselves in a whole new way. To reimagine themselves. You have to understand, these were fishermen. It's what they did. It's what their fathers did. These guys weren't just fishing now because they started out in sales and made so much money they'd retired early. These weren't guys just fishing to pay off their loans as they went through college. They weren't fishing for recreation with their buddies on the weekend with a cooler of beer in the back of the boat. They were fishermen. They fished. That's what they did. It's how they supported their family. It was their identity that they would have inherited from the generation before them. In other Gospels, they're not just leaving the boats, they're leaving their families behind. They reimagined what their life might be, and they took a risk. Jesus invites them to see themselves in a new way. I have to imagine this was frightening. To imagine it was frightening. Some of us would be scared to death by the opportunity put before us. You may have been there yourself. A door opens in your life and you had to decide if you had the courage to walk through the door. An opportunity comes to you and lands in your lap and you have to decide, do I have the courage to make this change? Some of us are scared to death of the opportunity. Others are desperate for it, going searching for an opportunity, sometimes finding bad paths in search of a right one, a different one, something new, trying to reinvent themselves. If you fall into that latter category, you may have already done the search on Amazon and found some of these fun titles. Reinventing yourself. Reinvent yourself. Reinventing your life. You 2.0. Reinventing you. The Starting Over Toolbox. Becoming a life change artist. 7 steps to reinvent yourself. They all sound pretty cheesy, right? Self-help books in general are a huge industry. I remember in Lexington, Kentucky, when the religion section was retitled the self-help and support section. And the religion books became one bit of it. And all the other books expanded. Texts you might have heard of, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Power of Positive Thinking, How to Win and Influence Friends, Who Moved My Cheese, The Art of War, The Power of Now, The Power of Positive Thinking, Awakening the Giant, Daring Greatly.